At the beginning, everything was perfect between us. We were in that sweet spot in the relationship where everything just clicked. We were happy, spending all our time together, making plans for the future. Everything felt solid, like nothing could tear us apart. I was convinced we were on the same page about everything, and that kind of security was something I hadn't felt in a long time. We weren't the kind of couple who needed to constantly be out and about to have fun. We were perfectly content just being together, no matter where we were. Then came the invitation from our mutual friends. They were planning a big night out at a popular club in the city, a place known for its lively atmosphere and great music. It wasn't really our scene, but it sounded like a fun change of pace. We hadn't done something like that in a while, so we decided to join in. We planned everything out, from the outfits we'd wear to the drinks we'd order. The idea of dancing the night away with her by my side was exciting. It felt like a chance to let loose and just enjoy ourselves. As the day of the event approached, things started to get a bit hectic at work. I was suddenly swamped with tasks that couldn't wait. It was one of those situations where everything that could go wrong did, and I found myself buried in work with no way to escape. I hated the thought of canceling our plans, but it seemed like I had no other choice. I could see the disappointment in her eyes when I told her. She tried to hide it, but I knew she was looking forward to the night out as much as I was. It made me feel guilty for even considering backing out, so I suggested she go without me. She hesitated at first, not wanting to go alone, but I didn't want her to miss out on the fun just because of me. I reassured her that everything would be fine and told her to go enjoy herself with her friends. It took some convincing, but eventually she agreed. I could tell she was eager to have a good time, and I didn't want to be the one holding her back. I buried myself in work, trying to get everything done as fast as possible. It was frustrating, but I kept pushing through, knowing that the sooner I finished, the sooner I could surprise her at the club. Hours passed, and I was working like a man possessed. Every time I glanced at the clock, I felt the pressure mounting. I had this mental image of walking into the club and seeing her face light up with surprise and happiness. That thought kept me going, even as the stress of work weighed me down. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I managed to wrap things up earlier than expected. A surge of excitement hit me as I imagined her reaction when she saw me walk through the door. I didn't text her to let her know I was on my way. I wanted to surprise her. I pictured the smile on her face, how her eyes would light up when she saw me, and how we'd spend the rest of the night dancing and having a great time together. When I finally arrived at the club, the place was packed, just as you'd expect on a night out. Music blasted from every corner, lights flashed in rhythm with the beat, and the crowd surged with energy. I pushed my way through the sea of people, scanning the room for her. My excitement grew with every step. Then, in the dim, flashing lights, I saw her. She was by the bar, but something was wrong. She wasn't with our friends. She was with another guy. And they were kissing. In that instant, everything seemed to slow down. The excitement and anticipation dissolved into shock. My heart sank, and a cold wave of disbelief washed over me. It felt surreal, like I had stepped into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My mind went blank, and all I could do was stare, frozen in place. Seeing them together felt like a punch to the gut. Anger, betrayal, and disbelief hit me all at once, a chaotic mix of emotions that I could barely process. Without thinking, I stormed through the crowd towards them. My vision tunneled, and all I could see was them, locked in that kiss that shattered everything I thought we had. When I reached them, I didn't hesitate. I shoved the guy away with all the force I could muster. The look of surprise on his face only fueled my anger. He stumbled back, and before he could react, I threw a punch. It connected with a sickening thud, and the guy went down hard. The music was loud, but I could hear the gasps and shouts from the people around us. The next thing I knew, the bouncers were on me. Two of them grabbed me from behind, pulling me away before I could do any more damage. I struggled against them, still fueled by adrenaline and rage, but they were too strong. They dragged me towards the exit, and in the chaos, I caught a glimpse of her face, pale, shocked, and filled with a mix of emotions that were too confusing to read. She ran after me as the bouncers hauled me out of the club. I could hear her shouting my name, trying to explain, But I didn't want to hear any of it. My mind was racing, my heart was pounding, and all I wanted was to get away from her, from the club, from everything. Once outside, the bouncers shoved me towards the street, warning me to stay out. I barely heard them. All I could think about was her, inside that club with some other guy, doing God knows what, while I was working my ass off trying to finish up early just to surprise her. The betrayal cut deep, and the pain was almost unbearable. She caught up to me just as I was about to leave. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to grab my arm, but I pulled away. She kept talking, trying to explain, to apologize, but her words were just noise in my ears. I was too angry, too hurt to listen. All I wanted was to get away from her and the sight of those tears that I no longer trusted. "I swear it's not what it looked like," she cried, her voice breaking. "Please, just let me explain." But I couldn't. I couldn't stand there and listen to her try to twist the truth or make excuses for what I'd just seen. It didn't matter what she had to say. The damage was done, and there was no going back. I turned away from her, ignoring her pleas, and walked off into the night. When I got home, I was a mess. I couldn't wrap my head around what had just happened. The image of them together was burned into my mind, replaying over and over like a broken record. My phone kept buzzing with her calls, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. I was too angry, too hurt to even think about talking to her. I spent the rest of the night in a daze, pacing around my apartment, trying to make sense of everything. But no matter how much I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I couldn't forgive her. Not for this. Not for something that cut so deep. The next day, she showed up at my door, crying, begging me to talk to her. She looked like she hadn't slept at all, her eyes red and swollen from tears. She kept saying she was sorry, that she never meant for any of this to happen. But her words felt hollow, like they were just empty promises trying to fix something that was already broken. I let her talk for a while, not really listening, just watching her as she tried to make things right. But deep down, I knew it was over. I knew I couldn't trust her again, not after what I'd seen. I finally told her it was over, that I didn't want to hear any more excuses. She looked devastated, but I stood my ground. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I knew it was the right thing. She tried calling me again later, but I didn't answer. I blocked her number, deleted her from social media, and tried to move on. But it wasn't easy. Everywhere I went, I was reminded of her, the plans we'd made, and the future we'd imagined. The pain of losing her and what we had was almost too much to bear. As hard as it was, I knew I had to move on. I couldn't let her betrayal define me or consume me. So I took small steps to rebuild my life, one day at a time. The days that followed were a blur of emotions: anger, sadness, regret. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together, and it tore me apart all over again. But I knew I had to put this behind me and find a way to rebuild my life without her. The hardest part was dealing with our mutual friends. They reached out on her behalf, trying to smooth things over and fix the situation. I couldn't bring myself to explain everything, so I kept my responses short and vague. Over time, their messages became less frequent and their tone more distant. It felt like they were slowly siding with her, and I felt increasingly alienated. I started avoiding social gatherings to keep from running into her or having to explain why things ended so suddenly. When I did go out, I felt like an outsider, as if everyone knew what had happened and was silently judging me. Friends who had once been close now seemed like strangers, and it hurt more than I expected. I tried to distract myself by diving into work, but focusing was tough. Everything reminded me of her and the future we'd planned. I'd catch myself wondering if she was hurting as much as I was, or if she regretted what she'd done. But I knew thinking about her wouldn't help. It just reopened old wounds. I noticed changes in myself too. I became more withdrawn and guarded, fearing that people would betray me like she did. It was a lonely existence, but it felt safer than letting anyone get close again. Eventually, the messages from our friends stopped altogether. They no longer invited me out or checked in on me. It felt like I had become invisible, like they'd decided to move on without me. What really stung was how my so-called friends sided with her. Even though she was the one who betrayed me, They seemed to shift their loyalty towards her. It was disheartening to see people I'd considered friends turn their backs on me. Over time, the pain started to fade, but it never really went away. It was always there, lurking in the background, a constant reminder of what I'd lost. But I learned to live with it and accepted that some wounds never fully heal. Despite the difficulty, I knew I'd come out stronger on the other side. Looking back, I realized the relationship wasn't as perfect as I'd thought. There were signs that things were off, but I was too blinded by love to see them. I'd put her on a pedestal, believing we were untouchable, but in the end, we were just like any other couple, susceptible to the same pitfalls. It was a hard lesson to learn, but one that made me more cautious and aware of the realities of love and relationships. In the end, I knew I couldn't let her betrayal define me or stop me from living my life. It took time, but I started to open up again, letting people in. It wasn't easy and I was still guarded, but I knew I couldn't let one bad experience ruin my chances of finding love again.